Hello, everyone. So we are still, I'm going to give folks a couple minutes just to get here from wherever they were coming here from. I have got my space set up here, and I encourage you to just like find yourself in a comfortable place. I'm going to share a little bit about kind of why this is important to me, how my day was, and kind of where we're going, and give people information just about kind of what is Yin Yoga, what is my philosophy of yoga. And so feel free, if you prefer to have your video off, that is totally your choice. If you prefer to have it on, that's also your choice. I work online all day, and so I'm used to video calls, but I also completely understand how like being in your own space and just doing your thing and getting to observe without being there is also really nice, especially for yoga practices and practices that are designed to be like personally healing and just you taking time for yourself. And so I always want everyone to know cameras on, cameras off, doesn't matter to me. I'm doing the same thing either way, still talking to a screen. So thank you for coming tonight. Those of you that are here, we might have a few more folks that join us as we go along. But I am Kim, and I know various of you from various places. And so I'm just happy to be here. If you found your way here from the long haul COVID community of sorts, welcome, and thanks for choosing to do this. You might have read in my email that around today is like my 1 year-ish time of when I first started to have a mystery illness that I thought was allergies that, changed the whole rest of the year. And I'm in the middle of the 2 weeks of getting my vaccine of that because I work in schools. So it's a very surreal experience right now. And Yin Yoga has been a practice that for me has literally probably what has kept me going throughout the last year. And so I'm really excited to begin to offer this on a regular basis to folks just as an opportunity to try something. I know for me, and maybe for you, you've tried a lot of things and some of them work sometimes, some of them work none of the time. And there are definitely times when it feels like nothing will work ever. And so I'm happy that you decided to try this tonight. And I want to just give the disclaimer that one of my things that I love most about yoga, especially yoga from home if you have your video off even, is any version of the pose is the pose, and you've already made it to the first pose. Like you clicked here, you got here. And so if you choose to spend the next however long we're together, about an hour, just sitting or lying down, you have completed a Yin Yoga class, because you will spend the entire next hour doing whatever pose you choose to do and breathing. And I think for me, when I first noticed that I more than likely had the mystery illness I had been reading about, I noticed because I couldn't take a deep breath in a yoga class. I found myself in a pose that we'll actually do tonight, realizing that it just wasn't working for me anymore. And so that's when I started to realize like, oh, this is something different. And so I want to encourage you also that like, if at any time during any of the things I guide you through tonight, you have emotions come up, do what you want to do with those. If that means that you want to put those aside to journal or think about or talk about at a future date, do that. If that means that you want to stop doing whatever you're doing and process that right now in whatever way works for you, do that. And if that means you want to cry for the rest of class, do that. I have done all of those things multiple times over the last year, and all of them are what I needed to do. And so with any yoga class that I teach, all of the things I guide you through are suggestions. They're all ideas of things that I've found that helped me, and they're things that might help you. And I will offer a lot of modifications and different options for people. And again, any version of the pose is the pose. But the most important thing is if you're feeling pain in your body of any kind, please don't do what I'm telling you to do. Please do something else. If you don't know what to do because we're on a screen and I can't come over to you and talk to you, just lie down. That's a pose. If you want to kind of stay a little bit after class tonight and kind of bring up any questions that you have about things that you noticed in your body, and maybe I have some ideas about what might make it feel different, I'm happy to do that. If not, I'm happy to tell you the names of things and you can Google it on your own. But tonight is just the time for you to take an hour to breathe, move around a little bit, You might have other people joining with you. You might have pets join with you. I have a dog. His name is Tails. You might see him. He likes to make guest appearances in classes. So if you have pets join you, that's great. And so for our first pose, we're just going to do a seated meditation. And if you are brand new to meditation, or if that word is something that doesn't really work for you, think of this as sitting, breathing, relaxing, and listening to a story. And so find yourself in a comfortable seat, whatever that looks like for you, and go ahead and begin to just notice every single part of your body that's touching whatever is underneath you. And so if you are sitting on the floor, on a yoga mat or a blanket, maybe you begin to notice where your feet touch the floor, where your seat touches the floor, and just notice that. If you are lying down, because that works better for you, notice what it feels like to have something underneath the entire length of your body. But just begin to notice that and begin to notice your breath. And what I mean by that is, as you take an inhale, notice what it feels like to breathe in through your nose and wonder where the air goes. And so as you breathe all the way in through your nose, slowly start to begin to see if you can imagine that that breath has a color to it. So maybe it's your favorite color, which for me would be teal or light blue. And so you're imagining that you're breathing in your favorite color all the way into your lungs, as far as it will go. And another piece of tonight is don't ask your body to do something it doesn't want to do. And don't expect it to do something it doesn't want to do. A deep breath is a deep breath, no matter how deep it goes. So take a deep breath in, seeing if you can, in your mind, imagine what it feels like to fill up your lungs with your favorite color. And then hold that for just a couple seconds. And then slowly see if you can let that go and imagine that you are exhaling your least favorite color. As if you're exhaling things that you don't like, you don't want in your body. Maybe you're exhaling COVID, but not onto anyone. But just imagine that you're inhaling your favorite color and you're exhaling your least favorite color. And then if you feel comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes, and maybe that will enhance the visualization. And this time I want you, on your next breath, to imagine that you can breathe in, and maybe you can breathe in all the way down to your seat. And so obviously our lungs don't go all the way to the ground, but imagine that you can breathe in and fill your entire body with your favorite color. Maybe that feels like you fill up your chest and then your belly, and then maybe it creates a cloud underneath you that's just holding you. And then as you exhale this time, I want you to just open your mouth and sigh out. And with that, on your next 2 breaths, do that again, but see if as you sigh out, you can just let your shoulders drop. We often don't notice that we're holding our shoulders up, and that can lead to a lot of extra tension that we don't actually need to hold on to. So do that 2 times on your own. And then once you've done that, we're going to do a couple neck stretches just to really notice what our neck and our shoulders feel like. And so on your next breath, as you inhale, I want you to drop one ear to one shoulder. I'll be dropping my right ear to my right shoulder first. And as you drop your right ear to your right shoulder, if your eyes are still closed, imagine that you can trace the left side of your neck and maybe the left side of the top of your shoulder, and just notice if there's any tension on there, and imagine that you could just scrape it off with your breath. It doesn't matter if it's the inhale or the exhale, just imagine that you could just scrape that off. And do that a couple times, and when you feel ready, just inhale your head back up to the center and drop the opposite ear to the other shoulder. And do that at your own time. We each have different bodies, we each had different days, we each have different tension. And so we'll spend about 2 minutes just deciding which ear you want on each shoulder and just letting yourself feel into your neck. So I encourage you to take 2 or 3 breaths on each side before you switch to the other, just to allow your body to settle. But just rotate one ear to one shoulder for a couple breaths. Breathing in, seeing if you can scrape off any tension. Breathing out, seeing if you can let your shoulders drop a little bit further away from your ears. We hold a lot of things. We've been holding a lot of things. And in many ways, we've been holding our breath, whether we've literally been holding it or it's just felt like we needed to hold it because we weren't sure what was happening. And once you feel complete with that, just inhale and bring your head back to the center. And we're going to do this forwards and backwards, so similar thing. But if you know that that will not work for you because moving your head in this direction doesn't work, just keep doing what you were doing, or try and just drop your chin to your chest and look down so that you can get a stretch across the back side of your neck. But if you'd like to try the same motion of inhaling and looking up to the ceiling to stretch out the front of your neck, holding that for a few breaths, and then coming back to center and dropping your chin to your chest, stretching out that part of your neck for a few breaths. Just begin to really notice all four sides of your neck. And maybe as you have your head lifted, you also feel a stretch across your chest. Or as you have your head tucked, you feel a stretch across the back of your neck and the top of your shoulders. But just continue to notice all the sides of your neck, noticing tension, trying to let your ears and your shoulders be farther apart from each other. And then once you feel complete, coming back to center with your eyes closed if that feels okay for you. And now I want you to just take 5 deep breaths, allowing yourself or imagining to yourself that you can just sink farther into the ground. Your shoulders can sink farther away from your ears on each exhale. Your spine can feel long. And that you can just feel really controlled, grounded, and that your breath is the only thing aside from my voice that you're focusing on right now. We've all had different things that we've done before this, and we all have different things that we'll do after this. But for the next 45 minutes, we're all here in our bodies with our breath, taking time for ourselves. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, if I guide you into a pose and you really like the way that feels and you want to stay in that the entire time, by all means do that. I will let us know when we're completely finished. And so if you lie there and fall asleep, as long as you can hear my voice, I will let you know when we're finished. Or if I guide you into something and you don't want it, go do something else. Each of these poses can be done on their own outside of this class as a way to just take a few minutes to yourself. So now that we're here, now that we've noticed our neck, now that we maybe feel a little bit more grounded and have maybe paid attention to our breath for the first time today, I'm going to guide us into our first pose. And so wherever you are from your seat, if you have yoga props with you tonight, I'll guide you through that. If you don't, and maybe you have a couple cushions on your couch or your bed and you have someone that can bring them to you, or you can go grab those. Apologize that I didn't mention that at the beginning, but grab maybe a couple pillows or cushions. If you have yoga blocks, those could be helpful but aren't required. Everything that's required is just you and somewhere to sit on the ground. And so our first pose that we're going to do is called Reclined Bound Angle. And so the way that you can do this pose is on your mat or wherever you are, go ahead and if you have a bolster, put a bolster perpendicular on your mat. If you have pillows, put pillows at one end of your mat, and then rotate your body so that your lower back is against that pillow or bolster. You aren't sitting on it, you're just sitting in front of it. And from here, what we're going to do in a moment is we're just going to lie back on this. And there's a couple different things that you can do to modify this that I'll tell you about. So if you have something you want to put under the bolster, maybe like you want to add a block so that it makes it a ramp and you're not lying all the way back, that can be nice. If you want to have something underneath you just to feel more cushion, like you're sitting on a cloud, that can feel nice. But wherever you are, find yourself where the pillow or bolster is right at your lower back. And then you can choose to either leave your legs in kind of a cross-legged position, straighten them out in front of you, or bring them into butterfly legs. And what butterfly legs are is just bringing the soles of your feet together and your knees out wide as if they're wings. And just begin to put your hands on each side of your hips and lie yourself back across this prop. And as you're lying back, again, if you feel comfortable, closing your eyes can be really helpful in relaxing your nervous system and focusing on your breath and focusing on just taking a break from everything in the world. If you have a job where you are on screens all day, closing your eyes can also be really helpful for giving them a break. But just find yourself lying back, make any adjustments or wiggles that you need to. And then in Yin classes, and especially in the Yin classes that I teach that can focus on taking a break and recovering from anything in life, especially COVID, we'll hold poses for 3 to 4 minutes. And I encourage you to take the first 30 seconds or so of each pose to wiggle or move or adjust in any way, but get yourself into a position that you can stay in. And this first pose is just, again, coming into our bodies, relaxing, focusing on our breath. And in this, I want to introduce the breath exercise that you can do at any time when you're feeling a need to feel calmer than you currently feel. And it's the idea of counting our breath. And so what I want us to try is just inhaling to a count of 4, holding for a count of 4, and then exhaling to a count of 5. And you can adjust those counts as you need to. The main focus of this is just making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. So go ahead and begin breathing by counting in that way in your mind, choosing a number to inhale and choosing a number a few seconds longer to exhale. And see what that does for encouraging your body and your mind to just relax. And see if you can, on each exhale, sink a little bit more and let everything that's underneath you hold you. You've been holding yourself, you've been holding all of the things, and in this moment, just allow yourself to be held. Many of us might be doing these classes from our homes by ourselves, and this is the only thing that does hold us right now. So just allow yourself to be held, allow yourself to be here, and just sink in. And throughout the rest of our poses, we'll get into poses that will be more of a deeper stretch. And in Yin Yoga, the deeper stretch is designed to stretch our myofascial system, which is the deeper muscles within our body. And what that can do is just really allow our nervous system a chance to stretch, relax, and release. Because many of the times in our life when we experience hard things, whether they be illness, trauma, stress, existing in the world, our bodies hold on to things and we don't often consciously release them. So Yin Yoga invites us to just sit and be and let things go. And so right now, just sit and be and rest into whatever is underneath you for another minute. And take 3 more intentional breaths in whatever way works for you, counting or just letting your body breathe as it needs to and wants to. And then once you've finished those 3 breaths, go ahead and press into your elbows so that you can press into your palms and slowly lift yourself up from whatever you're lying back on, coming back up to a seat for just a moment. You don't need to move the prop at all at this point, but what we are going to do once we're up in a seat is shift onto our hands and knees facing that prop. And so this is called a tabletop position. And so what you'll do is you'll put your knees underneath your shoulders, or knees underneath your hips, probably not your shoulders, your hands underneath your shoulders. And from here, as we breathe a couple breaths here, you'll just inhale and lift your head to the sky, drop your stomach to whatever's underneath you, flexing your spine in this way. And then as you exhale, you'll do the opposite motion. So you'll drop your head and lift your upper back to the sky. And this is called a cat-cow position. It just really lets us flex into our spine and elongate our spine and just move any of the things inside of our body around so that we can circulate blood flow and all of the things that have to flow around to help us on our journey towards whatever's next. So just breathe in this way, a couple different breaths. Noticing if you also feel a sense to like wag your tail of some sense. So maybe shifting your hips left and right, looking over your shoulders, doing some more of those neck stretches. And once you feel like you've gotten what you want from that, we're going to move into child's pose as our second pose. And if you would like to do this as a more restorative or supportive pose, the prop that you just used for a reclined bound angle can be used in this. And so from this tabletop position, you'll just put your big toes together. So leaving your knees where they are and bringing your feet together. And then you'll shift yourself maybe a little bit forward so that the prop, if you have a bolster, is between your legs for a wide-legged child's pose. And then you'll just begin to walk your hands out in front of your mat, stretching out your arms straight, and lay your entire chest over the prop. If you don't want a prop, no need to have a prop. But if you'd like that feeling of support and that feeling of being held, this can feel really great. And so if having your knees separated and a bolster between them doesn't work for you, child's pose can also be done with your knees together. It changes what the sensation and stretches in your back, but any version of the pose is the pose. And so begin to just drape yourself down over a prop or just over your knees onto the floor. And if you'd like to rest your forehead on the mat, that can feel really relaxing to just press into that space with the mat or the floor between your eyebrows. And just close your eyes and see if you can consciously, intentionally relax with each exhale. If you'd like to lay one ear on the mat, one side of your face, I'll let us know when we're halfway through so that you can shift to the other side. But just allow yourself to rest and release into this child's pose position for a couple minutes. Maybe feeling a stretch across your back, feeling a stretch across your sides. And in this pose, we're really stretching out our lungs, which when I was experiencing the first 6 months of being in recovery from COVID felt really strange because deep breaths were not a thing that really, it didn't feel the same for me. And so as I began to do this pose more, it became a really emotional pose for me because I began to feel the fullness of my lungs in a way that I couldn't for a while. And if that's true for you, I encourage you to just notice that, sit with any emotions that come up from that, and just realize how far your body might have come. If that isn't true for you and you feel still that constriction, just notice what it feels like to breathe in this pose. Any version of the pose is the pose, and a deep breath is a deep breath, no matter how deep it is. If we can deepen our breath just a little bit from the breath before it, it's a deep breath. So just be with your body. If you have one ear on the bolster or the mat and you want to switch to the other side, go ahead and do that. Just sink in and rest. Just be here, being held. And if your forehead is on the mat, maybe you want to kind of roll your head back and forth and see what it feels like to massage your forehead against the floor or the mat. On your next exhale, see if you can allow your chest to sink a little bit closer to the floor, releasing your upper back and just letting yourself be fully relaxed, stretched out, while also feeling a sense of compression in your hips. And go ahead and take 3 more breaths wherever you are in this child's pose. If you'd like to stretch out your arms a little bit more and see if you can stretch your shoulders out a little more, that might feel nice for you. Exhaling and letting something else go. And after those breaths on your next inhale, go ahead and press your hands into the mat and come back up into that tabletop position that we just did our cat-cows in. And you can move the prop that's in front of you out of the mat for just a little bit. We have the option to keep using it, but you won't need it right this second. So coming back up to a tabletop position, moving through a couple of cat-cows, inhaling, looking up to your ceiling, exhaling, dropping your head, arching your spine. And just noticing if you feel anything different in your body, if you feel like your breath is moving in anywhere new. And then our next pose that we're going to move into is called Pigeon Pose or Sleeping Swan. And the alternative option for this pose is called Figure 4. So I'll demonstrate Figure 4 first, and then I'll demonstrate Pigeon. Both of these are a hip stretch, and both of these are a pretty deep hip stretch for most of us. And so these will be poses that make sure that you aren't feeling any pain and change anything if you need to. I will let you know in the ways it might feel not great and how to fix that. But if you'd like to do Figure 4, what you'll do is you'll just come sitting with your feet planted, knees up towards the ceiling, and you'll lie yourself back on your back. And then what you'll do for this pose is just you'll lift up one leg. I'll lift up my left leg to demonstrate this, and I'll cross my left ankle over my right knee in kind of this Figure 4 position. And this is one option. You can stay in this pose if this feels like what you need. You can also lift up your right leg and grab behind on your right thigh and just kind of pull that right leg in, and then you'll start to notice more of a stretch in both of your hips and across the back of your leg. And that's one option. But if you'd like to try Pigeon Pose tonight, which is my absolute favorite yoga pose and a pose I have cried through many hours over many years, just because for me, my emotions are often stuck in my hips. What you'll do for this is coming back to that tabletop position, starting with our left leg. We will lift up our left knee and bring it towards our left wrist and kind of open our legs so that our left ankle goes towards our right wrist. And then we'll tuck our right toes a little bit, move our right leg back in space straight, and we'll be in this position with our left leg straight behind us, our right leg straight behind us, our left leg forward. And you might notice that your hip is kind of hanging here in space, and that feels incredibly strange. What you can do with that is you can take anything that's around you. I have a yoga block here, and just kind of put it underneath that left hip so that it doesn't have to feel like it's hanging in space. And if you'd like to add something else under there, that's great too. And then with your hands, you might want to come down onto a prop like we did for child's pose, or you might want to come down onto forearms, lying yourself over your left knee forwards on your mat, or you might want to come all the way down and drape your head similar to how we did in child's pose. But wherever you are in this pose, what you should be feeling is a sensation across the front of your right hip and a sensation in your left hip. If you're feeling any pain in your knee, I encourage you to try Figure 4 instead, because that's what your body needs. But if you're just feeling a sense of a really deep stretch and sensation that doesn't feel like pain, that is what this pose can do. And sometimes my body needs me to tuck my back leg toes underneath because it feels really strange on my knee. It doesn't feel like pain, it just feels uncomfortable. So if you need that, do that. But wherever you are, just see if you can, on your next exhale, sink a little bit farther in, get out any wiggles that you need, and just be here for a couple minutes. There are an incredible amount of different body systems that cross and intersect and are really involved in our hips that I had no idea about until I started to notice how much, when I'm going through something full of emotions, my hips are tight. And in this pose, they loosen up. And so all of that comes up. And so remember, again, if that happens to you, it's not a problem. It's just your body working through the life that it's having. So just sit with it, be with it, and do something with it afterwards that's healthy for you to move through it. I think of yoga as kind of riding the wave of our breath, and wave analogies are one of my favorite things because I think they can come in different forms. We can be bringing things to shore, or we can be cleaning things up from the shore. And each one of those can be healthy in its own way. So wherever you are, come back to your breath. Maybe come back to that counting, making the exhale a little bit longer, or coming back to that visualization of inhaling your favorite color and exhaling something that you don't want and letting it go. Go ahead and take your final 3 breaths on this side, encouraging yourself to sink a little bit deeper, let something else go. Challenge yourself to sink a little bit deeper if you want, but again, don't push yourself somewhere you don't need to go. And once you've taken that final exhale, coming back up off of your forearms, pressing your hands into the mat. And we're going to shift back into that tabletop position. And so carefully, the way that can be easiest to get to that position is tucking your back toe under, pressing into the mat and lifting up that left knee, bringing back to hands and knees, making any movements you'd like to make. Cat-cow can just be a great way to work out anything stuck in your spine, but whatever you need is what you need to do. And if you're in figure 4, just rolling yourself up and coming back to hands and knees. And once you feel complete with that side, we'll start with from figure 4, we will be lying back on our back. And this time we'll lift up our right leg, crossing our ankle over our knee, and then grabbing onto that thigh if you need to or want to, and feeling that stretch across your hip. But if you're coming into Pigeon Pose, we'll just lift up our right knee or whichever knee we did not just do. And we will bring that to our wrist, bring our right ankle to our left wrist, and then drape our left leg back in space. And again, put anything underneath your right hip that you need to. If you don't want it to be floating in space, tuck your left toes under if you need to. And one of the things that became most important for me over the last year and in general is reminding myself that no 2 days are the same, no 2 postures are the same. And whatever I was able to do the last time I did a class, I might need to do something different this time. And so if you have practiced yoga before and remember what your body did in the last class, remember that this is not that class. This is today's class, and you're doing what you need to do and what your body wants to do today. And so adjusting anything that you need to, and then if you're on Pigeon Pose, coming down onto those forearms, maybe dropping your head onto the mat. And on your next few exhales, just sinking in a little bit farther. And along with knowing what your body needs each day is remembering that although our bodies might look symmetrical, they aren't, internally or externally, oftentimes. And so you might need to do something different on this side than you did on the other side. encourage you not to expect everything to always be the same on each side. If you drive throughout the day, you use one side of your body's muscles different than the other, so it obviously would need something. But even if you aren't driving, you have a unique body. It's different on each side, different each day, and different in each breath. So on your next breath, see if you can allow it to just rest and release a little bit more. Seeing if the front side of your left hip can just stretch out a little bit longer. Never wanting pain, just noticing sensation. And this is probably our most intense pose of the evening. And so if you are in this class wondering why you came here and feeling like you've pushed yourself too far, change what you're doing. We're about halfway through, and this is the hardest part. So know that you are on your way to more relaxation. Coming back to your breath and taking 3 more on-purpose breaths, or intentional or mindful, whichever word works for you. And after those breaths, go ahead and begin to rise yourself back up. If you're in Pigeon Pose, pressing your hands into the mat, coming back up. And we're not going to come back to figure 4 this time, or tabletop this time. We're just going to come onto our bellies. And so if you were lying in their back on figure 4, go ahead and uncross your knees and just come to lying flat on your belly, on your mat, face down. And this time we're coming into Sphinx Pose. And so you will want your elbows underneath your shoulders, kind of propped up a little bit. And then from here, you'll maybe want to lift up one leg at a time and feel like you're stretching it back in space and lower it back down with the top of your foot on the mat so that you feel some sort of a minimal stretch across the front side of your hips. And with your shoulders, your elbows underneath your shoulders, to make sure that this is a good alignment for you, you might want to bend your arms in so that you can grab opposite wrists with opposite elbows with opposite hands, and then unfold your arms back out and plant your hands on the mat. And in this Sphinx pose, there's a couple different options. You can stay kind of propping yourself up, looking ahead, maybe with your eyes open or eyes closed, or you can drop your chin to your chest and allow yourself to look face down at the floor or the mat underneath you. And then you can also even sink into this a little bit further by allowing your heart to kind of rest between your shoulder blades as if it's being held by a hammock between your shoulder blades. And if you allow yourself to do that, you might notice that that changes your sensation of your breath. You might notice that a deep breath feels a little bit different. But you also might notice that you get a unique sense of relaxation across the top part of your back and the bottom of your neck. And in that, I would encourage you to just allow yourself to let your heart and your lungs just be held in this hammock-like space if you've chosen to drop your chin. And in this pose, again, a deep breath might feel a little strange. This was the first pose I noticed that deep breath started feeling strange. And so if that comes up for you, change what you're doing, or just move your arms out from underneath you and just lay face down on your mat. We'll only be here for another minute. And this is just a transitional pose between what can be a really intense pose and a couple more of our heart opening poses. Vulnerability looks different for each of us. Sometimes it comes when we're in our face down moments, and sometimes it comes when we're face up. So I want to make sure we each have time to do what we need between things. And if you're feeling anything during your days and you need a moment to just relax and be, this can be a great pose to take if you have a place to just lie face down, because it can offer some stretch and also some relaxation and ability to get a deep breath across your chest. So wherever you are, whether you're in Sphinx Pose or lying face down, go ahead and press yourself back up. And then go ahead and move into a tabletop position for just a moment, bringing your knees underneath your hips, hands underneath your shoulders. And just do one cat-cow and notice what your spine feels like now as you inhale, and then as you exhale and drop your head. And from this position, you'll just bring your knees forward a little bit so that you can sit back on your heels, if that works for you. And we're going to have two options for what we can do as our next pose. And those two options will be saddle or fish pose. So if you know either of those and want to go ahead and move into that, make your choice accordingly. But I'll cue us through saddle pose first, because saddle pose is the easiest one to get to from sitting on our heels. So what you'll want to do is, from sitting on your heels, spread your feet a little bit so that you can sit between your heels. If that doesn't work for your knee, I will guide us through something different, or you can do one leg at a time. But from here, if you have pillows or other props, go ahead and place one of those behind you again, because we're going to be similar to reclined bound angle. We're going to be lying back on this. And so to get into saddle pose with you're sitting between your heels, go ahead and place your hands on each side of your feet and just walk them backwards. If you feel pain in your knee, I encourage you to do something different. I will give you an option. But if you just feel sensation across the entire front of your thighs and your hips, you are on your way to saddle pose. And you might want to come down onto your elbows, and then you might want to lay all the way back on that prop. If you don't want to, don't do that. Or if you want to prop that up, that's definitely an option as well. But if you feel pain or sensation that's incredibly uncomfortable in your lower back or your knees, you might want to try taking fish pose, or if you would just like something different. And so to get into fish pose from sitting up, what you'll do is you'll bring your legs out from underneath you. And you can, again, same options as reclined bound angle. You can come into butterfly legs with the soles of your feet together, or you can have your legs out in front of you. And if you have yoga blocks, I prefer those for this, but you can use any prop you want. You'll want to place those behind you on your mat as well. You'll have one to be right at your shoulder blades and one to have your head resting on. And from here, I like to plant my feet first, place my hands at my sides, and slowly walk myself back so that my shoulder blades are draped over the first block, and then my head rests on the second block. And this pose allows for more of a heart opener than a hip opener. Saddle pose allows for both, but fish pose can really allow a different type of stretch across our back and across our chest. And let us take a deep breath again in a different way. So whichever pose you're in, I encourage you, as you take a deep breath, to imagine that you are breathing again in your favorite color, or just breathing in a deep breath and opening your heart. And that can feel like opening it to emotion. That could feel like opening it to healing and recovery, opening it to asking it to circulate your blood, because that's its job, and just noticing it. And so if you experience chest tightness, this can be something that you might want to try, because it can allow your muscles on your chest to just relax in a different way. And sometimes our chest tightness can be from anxiety. Sometimes it can be from strange things happening in our body from a mystery illness. And sometimes it can be both. And so if this is working for you, you can always come back to it. You can always take a deep breath and imagine that your chest is opening up. You can place your arms out to the side, stretch it out a little bit more, or place your hands wherever makes sense to you. Or wherever you are, just take a couple breaths here. Let yourself feel open and sink in. And on each exhale, just let yourself relax a little bit more. Be supported by whatever's underneath you. And remember that although you placed the props underneath you, you chose to be here. So ultimately you are supporting yourself in this time. And you are taking care of yourself. Coming back to your breath. Remembering that although it's been different at times, it's been with you the entire time. And it will be with you the entire time. And you can always ask it to go a little deeper if you need that. You can always pay attention to it, count it, notice it, let it distract you from things in your mind. But take 3 more intentional breaths here in this pose. And on that 3rd breath, go ahead and press with your elbows into the mat. Tuck your chin to your chest to slowly bring your head, your entire body up. Just enough so that you can move anything underneath you out from underneath you. And then just lie yourself back on your back. And so if you're in saddle, you might have to come up a little more to get your legs out from underneath you. But just lie yourself back on your back and bring your knees into your chest. And just give yourself a hug. And so whether that means you want to wrap your entire arms around your legs, or you want to place your hands on your knees and just pull them in, just pull yourself in and give yourself a hug while lying on your back. And maybe you want to rock side to side, feeling out what this feels like in your spine, on your lower back, just to move a little bit, not necessarily doing anything special with your breath, just moving around, feeling your body, noticing if it feels any different than it did a little bit ago. And then grab onto one knee, stretch out the other leg out in front of you, really pull that knee in closer to your armpit, take a breath or 2, and then trade, grabbing the other knee, stretching the other leg out. And you can stretch it out in front of you or up to the ceiling, whichever works best for you, whatever you want to do. And then before we move into our final pose before Shavasana, which is our resting pose at the very end, we're just going to take Happy Baby as a transition, which is a fun way to stretch out parts of our body. And so from here, what you'll do is you'll kind of bring your feet up towards the ceiling a little bit, just so that you can grab the outsides of the soles of your feet. And imagine that you can pull your knees into your armpits. If you can, great, do that. But imagine that you can do that and just feel that sensation across your back, feel the sensation across the back of your legs, and just maybe rock side to side in this Happy Baby position. For me, this creates a stretch uniquely across my upper back, which feels really great to take a deep breath into. It's also really nice to press my head into my mat if I'm feeling any type of sensation along the back of my head or my neck. And once you feel complete here, just come back to holding your knees into your chest. And we're going to go into a lying spinal twist. And there's a couple options for this. And so the first option is to just inhale, and then on an exhale, drop your knees over to one side. I'm going to drop mine to the left first, and they'll just be stacked over to that side. Your chest is pointing up towards the ceiling. You're looking up towards the ceiling, or you can look one direction or the other. And you're just here in this twist with both shoulders on the ground, both knees dropped over to one side, and just breathing into stretching and twisting out your internal organs and stretching your side body. Another option is to have your knees pointed up to the ceiling and cross your right leg over your left leg, and then drop your knees over to the left. And this can create more of a stretch along your IT band. You can feel, it just feels different. All of these are twists. All of these are lying down twists. And so whatever you would like to try tonight, try that. But just choose an option that you can be in for a couple minutes, letting yourself kind of wring out your day, using your breath to imagine that you can clean out anything else that's stuck that you want to let go of. Maybe your back cracks a little bit. And maybe this isn't something that your body wants to do tonight and you want to just lie on one side. Do that. Just wherever you are, take a breath, and on your exhale, drop in and relax. If you want to put something under your knees to catch them so that they don't have to be holding in the air, do that. And sometimes when I'm in this pose, I like to, with my right hand, if my knees are to the left, hold the back of my head. It just feels nice to hold on to my neck. Maybe I give myself a little bit of a neck massage, or I just hold on to this part of my head that sometimes needs some extra love. Maybe you want to look over one shoulder. See what that does for your neck if you need it. But just take 3 more breaths on this side, letting yourself twist and wring out anything else that needs to be wrung out, as if you're getting the final droplets out of a wet washcloth. And then if you had your legs crossed, go ahead and uncross them before you bring them back to the center. And then on an inhale breath, bring your knees back up to the center, pointing them to the ceiling. And before we move to the other side, go ahead and move your feet out to the edges of your mat or your space, and just drop your knees in together to the center, kind of creating this little pyramid shape. And someone recently told me that this pose with our knees draped into the center is one of the only poses that we can actually relax most of our pelvic floor muscles at the same time, which is where many of us can often hold stress, hold tension, and even hold our breath. And so in this pose, it might simply feel like lying on the ground. You're actually releasing and relaxing a lot of really deep internal muscles in a way that we can't often do in other positions. And so go ahead and bring your feet back to the mat, your knees pointing up to the ceiling. And we're going to drop our knees to the right this time. So you can go ahead and bring them into your chest and drop them over if you like to do that. Or lift up your left leg, cross it over your right, and then drop your knees to the right side. And again, both sides are not the same. A twist might feel different on this side, and you might want to prop yourself up. Do that if you need to. Wiggle around in any way that you need, and then just settle into this for a couple minutes. Your knees to the right side. Maybe this time you want to hold the back of your neck with your left hand. See what that feels like as an extra stretch across your chest and the support for your head. And wherever you are, just coming back to your breath. This is our final pose on the final side before our final resting pose. And in our final resting pose, we aren't actively doing anything except resting. And so this is the last pose where I'll encourage you to notice and guide your breath. The last few minutes will just be you lying on the mat with you. coming back to your breath and taking 5 more breaths this way, any way that you want to. These are your last 5 intentional, directed, purposeful breaths. So whichever way you want to try that, whichever one of the breath visualizations you want to use or not use, take 5 breaths. And once you finish those 5 breaths, we'll just move into Shavasana, which will just be coming back up with our knees and then straightening out our legs and just lying flat on your back. And so whenever you're ready for that, you're welcome to transition into that. And if you need to move in any other way, of course, move in that way. But go ahead and find somewhere that you can just be and not have to do anything except to be there. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, do that. And I'll let us know when it's been about 3 or 4 minutes and guide us to a final breath together and then carry on with the rest of our day. So just let yourself rest, let yourself fly back, and let yourself be fully and completely held by everything underneath you. You don't need to do anything for the next few minutes at all. And as we transition into this final pose, I want to share a quote from one of my favorite people who has consistently demonstrated how much she also cares about other people, in my opinion. And it's by Dolly Parton. And the quote says, "I know who I am. I know what I can and can't do. I know what I will and I won't do. I know what I'm capable of, and I don't agree to things that I don't think I can pull off." And sometimes we feel like we have to agree to things we can't pull off, and sometimes that's true. But tonight, you did this. You took this hour for yourself, and you got from it what you needed. And if you want to come back at any time and do this again, you'll be able to. And you can do these things on your own. And so I encourage you, as you settle into this final few minutes, to just thank yourself for taking this time and doing this. Whatever it is that you've done for the last hour, you did it yourself. I gave you suggestions, but you ultimately did this. I'm going ahead, if you would like to take a final breath together, to wiggle your fingers and your toes. If you'd like to stay where you are, obviously stay where you are and you can rest and be here. But if you'd like to take a final breath, come back to the room, come back to the space, wiggle around. And then on a breath, go ahead and roll over to one side, taking a moment and resting on your side in a fetal position. And then press yourself up to a comfortable seat. You can keep your eyes closed if that's comfortable for you, or open them if you want to. And once you find yourself in a seat, place your hands on your knees if you'd like, or your hands at your side, or bring your hands over your heart, one on top, one on bottom. And we'll just take a breath together. So we'll take a big inhale, maybe inhaling all the way down into our belly, holding that for just a moment. And then open mouth, sighing and exhaling that out. And just being grateful that you came here, took this time, and congratulations, you made it through. I will be here for a few more minutes if anyone wants to stay and chat